Laurel Canyon producer, Dave McGowan.
Yeah, Rob, talk about Laurel Canyon. You tell them about the Laurel. We had a great conversation on this the other day. I think everybody would really appreciate this, so we can put the pieces together.
I'm sure you guys know about it, right? About Dave McGowan's book, Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon.
No? I don't know about it.
I'm not sure that they would know. Okay, good. Go.
It's basically saying that, the 27 Club, like, they all died at this very young age, 27. They all knew each other. They all, all these rock bands in the 60s and 70s lived in Laurel Canyon, which, going back to, like, the 1920s, was this weird occult neighborhood for the Hollywood stars, and it has all these underground tunnels. Frank Zappa owned a very big log cabin. It was basically a lodge, like a ski lodge, and that's where they all hung out. And that place burned down in a fire, which is the subject of the song "Smoke on the Water." So if you listen to the lyrics of "Smoke on the Water" by Deep Purple, they're singing about this place.
I thought they were talking about Montreux. I thought it was that when the casino burned in Montreux. Wasn't it?
No, it's Zappa's little.
The Mamas of Invention. He mentions the Mamas, the mothers. That's right. Oh,
Frank Zappa and the mothers.
Yeah. Burn the place to the ground. Got it.
So they said it was an accident, but
it's interesting that you bring up Laurel Canyon because there's a indigenous Indian tribe that's from that area that believes that was the area that was the Garden of Eden. That's where humanity started there, where creation was. A friend of mine is looking into the tunnels that lead from there to California or to Los Angeles and the port of Los Angeles and all of that. And she's found quite a few portals in that area.
Yeah, there's supposedly ancient tunnels there, which you can look up. It's easy to find. But there's also modern tunnels down there too, and they go like the Playboy Mansion has tunnels under it.
Yes.
In fact, if you look now, they've dug up the entire backyard of the Playboy Mansion. It's all excavated. If you can find pictures on the internet, and apparently the tunnels went to certain people's homes.
Yep.
I forgot which actors they were, but probably also went to the Beverly Hills Hotel, which is on the cover of Hotel California. So that's what they were talking about back then. So if you put a pedogate overlay of the very mysterious song Hotel California, you'll start to, things start to come into focus. It's things that, from the 70s especially, that before people were talking about pedogate as a thing, if you put that overlay over a lot of these different aspects that didn't make sense, they start to become more clear. So if you look at the lyrics of Hotel California, it seems to be some kind of pedogate operation operating out of a hotel. They bring the underage victims to a tunnel so no one sees them coming or going. The rich people come in and molest them, pay a lot of money. Now they're blackmailed because they're caught on camera. Mirrors on the ceiling. And the new location is supposedly the Standard Hotel. That's what all the Q people have been talking about. The Standard Hotel is where it's been moved to, which is closer to downtown LA.
Isn't it also in that whole area right there in Laurel Canyon? There's on Point Lookout or Lookout Mountain, which is where all the really top rockers in the 60s and 70s live. Right over there. There's an Air Force base, and every one of these rock stars had parents that were in high levels of military intelligence or admirals. For example, Jim Morrison's dad was an admiral, and he literally was behind the Gulf of Tonkin incident, for those that did not know. And also, what's the other one? Heart, all those bands, their parents they were all like officers in the military.
Zappa.
Heart, Zappa, almost all of them.
Yeah, they all come from military families.
Yeah. Big rock stars.
Maybe even Captain Beefheart probably too, if you think about it.
I guess.
But he was off the edge.
You always liked him. I never was into Captain Beefheart. I know you used to be into him. I was like, I couldn't get that. Rob used to get it. Rob Post. I can't get that.
Yeah, I used to sit there and listen to Captain Beefheart, and he took music in a direction that no one else took. and it influenced a lot of punk rock people in the 70s. It's just no one ever went in that direction.
That's true.
Wherever
But I mean,
he
there is definitely, look, we know Hollywood's full of pedogates. I mean, pedophiles are everywhere in Hollywood. It's like they call about the gay mafia too there in Hollywood. You know, you got to, you know,
Well,
if you really want to be a $20 million guy, you got to suck some dick. Excuse my French.
It's
you're a
not
male
just
actor in Hollywood.
West Coast.
Yeah,
This is
if you
everywhere.
want to be in a $20 million club, you got to suck some dick. It's the truth. If you're a man.
I think every county in the United States has a pedocate operation going on.
Yeah.
Steele said it was every state, but I think it's every county.
You might be right.
There might be a few counties that don't have it or that gang them together, but Martinsburg, West Virginia, that's where Danny Casolaro was killed. And back in the 90s when I read the book, I was like, why Martinsburg, West Virginia? It sounded like the middle of nowhere. But if you look at it now on Google Maps, it's this weird little knob that sticks out of West Virginia, that there's all these weird state lines. There's a very thin sliver of Maryland that's only 2 miles across there. And there's all these little state lines. So you could literally like run 1 mile and cross
And be in like 3 states.
And that's why it was a big hotbed for the Underground Railroad. And that's another thing. West Virginia is an old coal mining state, so it's riddled with underground space. West Virginia is just, you know, there's probably more space under West Virginia than there is on top of it. There's all these places where you could put underground facilities in there and connect and do all kinds of weird stuff unseen. And that's what Katie Groves, Dylan Groves is what she goes by now, or she's multiple personalities, so she calls herself they. It's a woman. So a woman. She's homeless down in Texas, and you could subscribe to her channel. And she describes growing up in one of these families, and there was some torture chamber down there. They were making child porn and child snuff, and it was a horrible place. And that she was trafficked around the world. And
Jesus Christ.
I think the original video got taken down, but there are dupes of it around. It's called Uncle Sam's Snuff Factory.
You know, that's one I haven't read that. I'm gonna have to check that out. Yeah.
And yeah, the more you go down the rabbit hole, there are red herrings. There are people who are there to lure you in and get you killed off. So I think that's what happened to Danny Casolaro. Is he got lured out to Martinsburg, and he was murdered. And then they tried to make the story go away, but it became like a cult legend. So, yeah, I made friends with his son, Trey Casolaro, and he was telling, like, not only was his dad's briefcase stolen during the suicide, but his house was broken into.
Of course.
So, you know, there was some kind of weird stuff going on there. And the thing with PROMIS now is it's expanded to what's called total information awareness, or there's different names for it. Of these, and that was part of the Vault 7, and what was the other thing? The Snowden leaks. Vault 7 is interesting. This guy from the CIA leaked all this software, right? And he's still in jail. He got a hung jury a couple of months ago, and he was charged with child porn. And nobody covered this trial. It was going on at the same time as something else in a federal court in Manhattan. His name is Joshua Schulte. And if you tried to cover the courtroom proceedings, they wouldn't even let you in the room. They made you like cover your eyes so you couldn't see all the CIA people coming in and out of as witnesses.
Oh boy.
And you know, apparently, you know, if you're to believe the CIA, they hired this lunatic who's into child porn and put all their most sensitive software in his hands.
Unbelievable.
And he leaked it to WikiLeaks. But obviously there's more to the story. And the one guy who covered this is a guy called Inner City Press out of the Bronx. He's kind of a weird guy too, and he's banned from the United Nations because he covers child trafficking. But the Schulte case is very interesting because while he was in New York City, he was working at Bloomberg. All right, so I was able to figure out or deduce that the Bloomberg building is the new CIA headquarters. It's located at 59th and Lex, or 57th and Lex, and it went up shortly after 9/11. So they destroyed the old CIA headquarters at Building 7,
That's
which
right.
at the time no one knew it was the CIA station in New York City, but it was, right? And they needed a place to put it. And this is just a theory. And they built it uptown because they didn't need to keep it downtown anymore. To just keep an eye on all the finances because it's in the Bloomberg building. That's what Bloomberg does. They keep track of all the financial information. So you can walk in this building and go on any terminal and be tied into the CIA. It's not like an office. It's just like a cloud CIA station, pretty much. It's located at over by the old Alexander's. Was it Alexander's or Bloomingdale's or, the old department store there that they tore down?
Yeah, it was Bloomingdale's. Yeah.
And they got all the tunnels underneath it. The train lines, the 4, 5, and 6, and then the 7 goes across. And you got to look at the 2nd Avenue subway. There's this like multi-billion-dollar subway line that never got open. It was built in the 70s, and it's a few blocks from this Bloomberg building. So there's this 2nd Avenue subway. You'll notice that there's all these abandoned subways wherever you see something like Comet Ping Pong, right?
Right.
Like Comet Ping Pong in D.C. has an abandoned subway line.
Yep.
And then the Podesta paintings show like something that looks like a subway tunnel. And then on 2nd Avenue, down by Houston Street, down in down in the East Village, there are a bunch of vegetarian restaurants that belong to a guy named Matthew Kenny, and the NXIVM girls, the actresses, Allison Mack and Oxenberg. I forgot her first name.
Catherine Oxenberg.
Olivia Oxenberg.
Olivia, yeah, right.
Daughter. They were both sex slaves for NXIVM, and they both wound up working in this vegetarian restaurant owned by Matthew Kenny, right above the 2nd Avenue subway. And it turns out he has a bunch of these restaurants that keep changing names, they keep changing location, but they all stay in that one little spot. And there was all these things where like these people absconded with millions of dollars and got busted in Las Vegas ordering pizza or some kind of weird thing like that. And anyways, it turns out Matthew Kenny is this famous vegan chef. He's world famous. And he was arrested in Fort Lauderdale, of all places, Broward County, running naked through the street, high on flakka. On flakka.
Nice.
So here's this millionaire, famous vegan chef associated with NXIVM. And this story made national news, and no one made the connection that this guy owns all those restaurants and knows all these celebrities. It's like all these weird people go to his restaurants, like, Johnny Depp, and you'll start seeing like these, there was a place in Manhattan called Man Ray. And the same thing, like Harvey Weinstein and Johnny Depp and all these celebrities used to hang out at this Man Ray, this goth club. It's kind of like the Viper Club in L.A., where River Phoenix died. And there was one in Paris as well, right? And Man Ray is the main suspect in the Black Dahlia murders, as per Randy Rocket Cody. So he was like one of the only people who could have pulled off that Black Dahlia murder in the 40s. So they changed the name of Man Ray in Paris to Manta Ray, and the one in Manhattan closed down. But, restaurants are a great way to launder money and also traffic people.
Well, we know that the Chinese restaurants and the saunas, the spa, the massage parlors that are all run by the Koreans, they bust people here in Connecticut all the time from Flushing with the prostitution and the sex trafficking. They get them all the time from Flushing. They're all the Koreans from Flushing. Well, we used to live near Flushing. Right? Yeah. What?
It's called a rub and tug.
The rub and tug, yeah. And they're like, they don't speak a lick of English. They make their slaves. There are so many people from Asia that are enslaved, like in this country, that it's unbelievable. You'd never.
And then our good libtard friend Ira, who's the big social justice warrior. We won't tell his latest girlfriend about the rub and tugs he used to brag about over there in Jackson Heights.
Oh, is that right? So he went to Rub and Tugs?
His $20 rub and tugs.
For the record, Ira is one of the three stooges that I call the three wise men.
Okay.
Because Lori and I were talking about this earlier. I was telling her about the three wise men, the three people who think they're wise men who are really the three stooges, and you just mentioned one of them. But
Yeah, a lot of these people will tell you with a straight face. They'll say, if you've never been with a prostitute, you're lying, right? You know, I've never been with a prostitute. I would never go and pay $20 to some, Asian slave girl in Queens. I mean, but these people walking around, Black Lives Matter, they're all gung-ho, and they're like, yeah, they're going around like exploiting people too.
Hey, it's just like buying Nike sneakers. Why are you buying Nike sneakers when someone's making 20 cents an hour, Or your iPhone that's made by slave labor, where if you're overworked and you're so overworked you just want to kill yourself and jump out the window, there are nets to catch you to put you back to work.
Yeah, well, sometimes I can't afford to shop elsewhere except Walmart, but at least I talk about it. I'll say, yeah, I bought this $20 boots at Walmart, slave labor, China, and I'll bring it up at least and say, at least be aware of it and tell people about it and say, I wish there was a way to buy shoes affordably from an American, but there's not. They're all made in these.
Well, apparently all of our national security interests, like in our pharmaceuticals and other aspects of national security, are all made in China, which is sort of frightening if you think about it.
Yeah. So basically, I'll tell you, I ran into a guy like 25 years ago up here. He lives in I think he lives in Arizona now. He was a dowser, right? And he was really into this. He knew he wasn't just like a guy who was into dowsing. He understood how it worked, and he did a lot of research. And there was like a group, like a society of dowsers up around this area where I live, and I found out a lot about it, and then mulling it over the years. Part of what we do as Pedogate researchers is dowsing, but in the end, what we are exorcists. But to be an exorcist, you have to be a dowser. You have to be able to somehow sense certain things that you can't see with your ordinary five senses, that things that don't exist. So I've seen, back in the day, this guy had these like advanced dowsing rods that didn't look like a regular forked piece of hickory. It was like a thing that had spirals on it. It was made out of brass, and he would just go up into the mountains, right, and look for ley lines, and just find like a group of kids up there smoking weed or drinking beer, and he would show them. He says, just hold this and walk over this line here, and the thing would just turn like perpendicularly, like just by itself. It's not really turning by itself. I mean, your hand is moving it, but it follows these lines. The ley lines, it's almost as if these ancient civilizations either knew about the ley lines or constructed them. And it's harnessing the energy of this planet. And then
what exactly are ley lines?
What's that?
What exactly are ley lines? Can you guys hear me okay? I mean,
yeah, good. You can make yourself louder if you can. I don't know. You're okay, though.
I'll adjust the mic.
Yeah, make it a little louder.
The ley lines I'm describing are spelled Ley, and they're they're considered natural energy lines that travel along the Earth at certain latitudes and stuff. And you'll find that a lot of ancient sites and cities are built at the confluence of these lines. And so like there'd be an ancient temple, and then the church would build on top of that ancient temple, and then the city would form around that spot. And they're energy lines, natural energy lines through the earth, and they get mapped out. And one of the ways you map them out is through dowsing. You basically, it's like a whole other subject. I mean, we'd have to talk just for a couple hours just about that. But
well, what's interesting about the ley lines is that a couple things. Is a lot of the Catholic cathedrals are built on a ley line hub, And a lot of you, if you overlay the ley lines here in the United States with the tunnels that we know of, a lot of them, they are exactly where the ley lines are. And yeah, and another thing with the ley lines is if you look into the Marian apparitions and the visions of Mary, a lot of them happen on the ley line hubs too. It's a deep topic.
Yeah.
And it's quite interesting because the Mormon temples here in the United States and around the world built on ley line hubs, where two intersecting ley lines come together. Sometimes 4, 5, or 6 lines come together to form this massive energy hub, and that is where these Catholic temples and these Mormon temples are being built on.
Yeah, you definitely, if you get a chance to ever take a little side trip and look into the Mormons, there's a lot of bullshit built into their belief system, but this at the kernel of it, there's something. I do believe that Jesus came to North America, and there are Indian legends that confirm it. So he was the one who there was a white man who came, or a lighter skinned man, who talked all the Native Americans into ending human sacrifice, and that's where you get the peace pipe, the sacred peace pipe. And it's basically the same idea, an animal sacrifice or a human sacrifice, and smoking or passing a joint is the same idea.
Well, it's funny that we were talking about the Freemasons earlier, and I don't know if a lot of people know that Joseph Smith, his father was a Freemason, his brother Hiram and him both achieved the 33rd degree in Freemasonry in like 2 days, and all of the Mormon rituals that take place in the temple are based off of the Freemasonry rituals.
Yeah, and that's upstate New York.
Catholic. Yeah.
Yeah, that all happens in Elmira, like up near Buffalo.
Yep, I've actually been to the Grove where the vision happened, into Joseph Smith's house when I lived in the area. So yeah, it's quite interesting up there to read the history. And it's interesting that you say you're talking about dowsing, because that's what Joseph Smith's father did. That's how they made a living, was through his dowsing and through his finding artifacts supposedly buried.
Yeah, basically you used to douse for water because it was very labor and time consuming to dig wells. Mm-hmm. So you would use a dowser to find the spots. You just get on the first try. And, the water will carry a current with it. So certain people can pick up on it. And this guy, his name is George, he was interested in dowsing for gold. And there was a different technique to use to douse for gold than you would douse for
Lost your audio, Rob. I lost your audio. What happened? We lost Rob. You there? Harry, you there? Oh, what happened? You got what happened? I lost you for a second.
Your windows just switched places.
Oh, okay. I guess so. Scared the hell out of me. Because I'm so used to that kind of shit happening. Anyway. But
yeah, so George was talking to a guy who invented the breathalyzer, and this guy had known about some experiments that NASA wanted to know how dowsing worked, because they knew it worked, they didn't know how it worked. So they spent millions and millions of dollars studying it until they figured out what made it work. And basically, they had to use old, obsolete electronics to do it. They had to use these things that look like top hats, these black capacitor things that are obsolete now. Those are the only things that could pick up whatever it was that was making dowsing work. And it's something it's some kind of vibration at like a terahertz frequency that passes through your human nervous system, and then you're picking up on a subcarrier, so your hand will slightly pivot the stick, right? So you're taking like these trillions of cycles per second that could see like an X-ray down to the ground, and then your nervous system kind of like picks up a subcarrier in it, and you use your mind to focus on whatever you're looking for. You could actually douse with a map. You don't even have to be there, and that's what he does. He sits there and map douses for missing persons.
Well, I'm looking on the internet right now, and it says dowsers are used by oil companies to find resources, so it must be credible.
Oh yeah, they use them in nuclear power plants to find the electrical lines in the ground because they bury the lines in the electricity in the cement, and if something's wrong, the physicists will just like take out a dowsing rod and find the electrical line that way, and it's just the quickest way to do it. You know, there's no textbook or certification, but it works. And they, you know, the astronauts know it works. I mean, NASA knew it worked. I mean, you know, a lot of people know it works. They just don't know how. But
What
it's
is-
basically your nervous system can pick up these ultra high frequencies and kind of convert them into a lower frequency that moves your hand. Basically, it's
Wow.
so your fingers are at the extremity of your arms. It's kind of like a phonograph needle in a way, or a seismograph.
But it kind of sounds like the whole new age thing about, you know, raise your frequency or your vibrations, all that kind of stuff. Like, there's no explanation for it.
Well, there was it's anecdotal. I just told you what it was. This anecdotal explanation is that NASA had figured out we're able to measure these very discrete frequencies that you couldn't measure with modern electronics. You needed something he called it a top hat. It looks like a black top hat. Those were whatever they used to detect the energy that's what they used to find it, and that was NASA. Or it could be a bullshit story, but it supposedly comes from the guy who invented the breathalyzer, and he was working at the time on some kind of TV satellite dish that was lightning proof. This was like, you know, back in the mid '90s. But it's the same thing. You could basically use these skills to find pedophiles and pedophile rings. You know, if you like Howie and I both had contact with Arnie, our teacher, who was
Oh yeah, this is a great story. Tell them the story about Arnie.
All right, all of us are pedogate researchers, right? All four of us,
Yep.
right?
Honestly,
You too?
I'm not. No, I'm an empath, so I avoid all of that because I don't want to know it or see it.
Right.
Okay, but you know a bunch of them, right?
I know about it, yes.
But you know some of these people like us that
Did
are
you
just,
know?
Oh, I'm a truth activist. Yeah, I'm a well-known truth activist. But it's like a doctor doesn't specialize in any. I specialize in psychological operations, you know, false flag, all that kind of stuff, mind control, social engineering. But I just stay away from that because, you know, some things are so evil. I don't want them in my mind.
okay. So you would ask yourself, why would someone like me or Howie or Lori here be so preoccupied with this? Is because we came in contact with it somehow, either
We did,
directly or indirectly, right?
Yeah,
And once you
I
know,
don't have that. I mean, I respect the work of the people who get it. I see it as work that is very gruesome, and
It is.
I respect the people who are doing it.
Very
so
dark.
once you know about this, and you've already seen it, you can't look away. You just keep going at it, and then you start running into other people who are doing the same thing. So it's very, you know, I had a similar experience with adoption search earlier in life. That, you know, there are a number of people who are searching for their ancestors because they're not allowed to know. So there's an adoption search community that, you know, they run into each other. So there's these pedogay people who run into each other, and so each one of them has a story to tell of how they came into it. They didn't just wake up one day and say, "Hey, you know what? I want to start spending a lot of time studying satanic pedophile trafficking rings." That's just not something people do. Like you don't want to have anything to do with it. But you know, early on, we had this teacher who turned out to be the most heinous child molester in Long Island history.
They
So
even made an HBO documentary about him.
Wow.
he died in prison, but he got busted 2 years after we graduated high school. And this guy was a great teacher. He was a really cool guy. Everyone liked him. Everyone took his class. It was a great class. We learned a lot. he ran a TV studio. So we all learned video production in high school. And he got caught. There was something that happened a few months before I graduated, where I was just like kind of like in the room looking at this guy, and he was like, I was just like staring at his eyes, and there was something in there that he was hiding.
He always was hiding something behind his eyes. You could see that. He had something like, you could almost call it fear. It almost had a look of fear, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and I started looking really deep into his eyes, and he just out of curiosity. I was 18. I didn't know, what was going on. I didn't know he was a child molester. And he flipped out on me. He just like, this very mild-mannered man just wigged out on me. Just like, get away from me! Get away! What are you doing? And I was like, I said, what's the matter, Arnie? And he's like, nothing's the matter. And don't call me Arnie. It was just the weirdest thing to me because
everybody called him Arnie.
Everyone called him Arnie. I mean, we all called him Arnie. And he was, I'll speak for Howard. If we knew at the time, we would have killed him, right?
We definitely would have killed him. No doubt about it.
We would have killed him.
And he was a wimp. He was a small little, frumpy sort of guy, like 5'3", 5'5", maybe, and he literally allowed the students to take advantage. I mean, to literally control the TV studio. I didn't take him for science. He was a science teacher also. I only had him for TV studio.
And he was a dean. He was a dean.
He was a dean also, which adds
guidance.
Let's talk about, we could also, in high school. He was also like, the kind of guy, like he came into class and I'm going to and you just grab the bathroom pass. I'm going to the bathroom, Arnie. And then you come back 5 minutes before the end of the class and he doesn't say, where have you been? What's going on? And you still get an A. He just gave everybody an A, basically. It's hard not to get an A in his class.
Yeah, but basically, so that happened, and there was this whole thing. Everyone who went to the high school was like talking to each other, like shocked. And his name was Arnold Friedman, and then the movie is called "Capturing the Friedmans," the documentary. It was nominated, I think, for an Oscar, right? It was nominated.
Yeah, it was.
And I have a copy of it. No one would actually buy this thing unless you had him as a teacher. I mean, no one would want to hear the story. It's so disgusting. But a couple of years later, so that was like, we graduated class of 85. He got busted in November 87. It was around Thanksgiving. And then, so around 92, I was working in the city, and a woman I worked with told me she was an SRA survivor. And, so these two things happened to me, like a close colleague of mine and a high school teacher got me into this subject. And I just, went down the rabbit hole and found out how deep it went, that it goes, to the Franklin cover-up. So back in the mid-'90s, that's all we had to go on for the most part, was the Franklin cover-up book. And, but, there's something you can hone in on. It's called a target. Like, when you're dowsing, you either state your target or you put a little piece of paper in something inside the pendulum, and it's called a target. And that focuses your mind on what you're dowsing on. And you can target on pedophile rings. You could basically, once you develop the skill, you can say, what vibe you felt around Arnie, and what vibe you felt around this other person, right? And you could just look back and forth and forward and backwards and say, where else have I felt this vibe? And then you start looking around there and you use your cognitive skills, and you'll say, well, there's a abandoned subway under this neighborhood, and, is there anything else here that would indicate, turns out there's pedophile rings everywhere, but
absolutely, and there are pedophiles everywhere, not just rings. My father, before he passed away, I moved him into my house for the last 2 years of his life, and I had to rebuild like a bathroom to make it accessible for him. And I hired this guy who did like sort of mediocre work, but it was cheap. It was a lot of work, and it was relatively cheap. and he became friends with me. We became friends. He had a little girl. He was married, family, struggling guy. It's his own business. He seemed like the nicest guy, right? Then there's this one time when we were just about done with the work, he's in my living room sitting on the couch and his daughter is there, and he has his daughter on his lap and he's looking at her. And I looked at him and he had the strangest look in his eyes. Like it wasn't even like a sexual look. It was more like a psychotic look. Like it was like something like there was something like if you're looking at my eyes, it was sort of like wild almost, and very focused. And, I never thought anything about it. And then about 2-3 years later, I open up the newspaper, the local newspaper in Torrington, and I see his picture in the paper drawn as a sketch because of somebody who actually the lake, which I live by now, I didn't live there then, 1,000 feet from me over here, he molested an 11-year-old girl. And they were looking for him. And I went right to the state police. And I said, I know who this guy is. And by then, they already knew who he was. So other people might have trusted.
Like I said, I don't
These
research.
people are everywhere, man.
I don't research or study these things, but I wonder if you guys have seen the recent movie by Stephen King called Dr. Sleep.
Of course. And that's what it's all about.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, I check out all of the recent movies so I can kind of look at what are they, and it was very, very clearly displayed what you're talking about, Rob, in terms of being able to sense them, because they showed them being sensed from a distance. Do you remember, Howard? And then when they murdered the young baseball player boy, and they were,
so
I don't know
graphic.
what to call it.
Yeah.
Yes, and they were like taking in his essence or something. It was all depicted in the movie. And so when you talk about how he had a wild look in his face, there's something spiritual going on here. And that's, I think I'd like to get deeper into that aspect of it. What do you guys is really behind it? Because it's not like baseball cards and they're keeping statistics. They're doing it for a reason. And I don't think it's all about sex. I think there's something evil, truly evil going on.
Well, it's taking their life force, as you saw in the movie. And it's even like, and I'm sorry, they scare the kid and she tells him she's going to kill him, just like they scare them. And pain, a lot of pain. And, and that's how to get the best essence, which is the adrenochrome aspect. How they, but they, Rob, if you ever see this movie, they rip this kid apart. It's fucking horrible. It's gruesome as you could ever imagine. It's so disturbing.
I honestly couldn't
watch. I turned away from once they started, I just turned away. I was like, enough.
Yeah.
I always kind of avoided Stephen King stories. I just never.
He's a Freemason, so bear that in mind.
Well, it goes along with the Hillary Clinton video that's out there. I mean, I'm not even going to say the word of it because it'll trigger the algorithms because Harry's broadcasting on YouTube. But the video that supposedly is with Hillary Clinton, and she's basically mutilating this child. And that has to do, with the whole aspect of putting that, taking that life force and pulling that adrenochrome.
That's exactly.
I mean,
and a lot of the New York cops, I mean, a couple of them have committed suicide that watched that videotape. So I mean, they're getting these rituals all around, the sacrifices, not only the sacrifice of the children, but the sacrifice of the men that have watched it that have committed suicide.
I've had that video sent my way a couple times, and as I've said, being an empath, I can't look at those things. I refused to watch it, but I want to know from you guys: was it really Hillary? Was it Hillary Clinton? Did that really happen? Because what I heard is
I haven't seen the video.
I haven't seen the video. It's illegal to possess the video. It's illegal to download the video, and the only place that you can find it is on the dark web, and I refuse to go there.
No one's found it on the dark web either, so it's not leaked. It's a story, and let's see, where does this story come from? It just
New York City Police. I remember that was reported. That they said
from the New York City Police.
They said the police had a video that they got from Wienerwagger. From
Wiener. His computer.
Yeah.
The closest, but if you follow it to its source, I mean, the closest source you're going to get is like Liz Crokin. So she knows people who've seen it, but you gotta hang your hat on her. So there's no one who's actually seen the video, as far as we know, from a direct interview. So and the adrenochrome thing too. There's no actual empirical proof of that. Although it's mentioned in movies like the Hunter Thompson. What's it called?
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Yeah, right. But there's something like that going on, and there was some kind of blackmail material on the so-called Wiener laptop. It was really Huma's laptop. So Anthony Weiner was using Huma Abedin, his wife's laptop, for sexting underage girls, right? And she had all that shit on there to protect her own life as insurance against what she knew about Hillary. So there probably is. We know snuff exists.
Well,
right?
Uma Abedin was the woman with, reportedly with Hillary Clinton in the video.
Supposedly, right. But like I said, there's something on that laptop. It's awful, but we don't know if that's exactly what it is. All right. There is a cartoon of that. Did you ever see this? There's a cartoon that one of these Nickelodeon people made where someone's keeping a kid and cuts off their face and does that. I forgot the cartoonist's name, but I could dig it up and send it to Howie. It's because I respect the fact that you don't want to look into this stuff, but basically, I strongly believe that there, for certain people, there's a way to just see these people that like it's not like someone like Hillary is not, she didn't wake up one day and say I want to be a child trafficker. She was somehow possessed. Right, so there's an evil spirit within her, right, and that's what you're looking for, right?
Well, you've seen the Clinton video, the MK Ultra video that Fritz Springmeier put up years and years ago when they had the cameras rolling before he was going to do some press, I guess, or whatever, and he is just completely in a trance with similar eyes to what I was saying. I mean, they weren't demonic. Like this guy's eyes were demonic. This Chris Daraz, you can Google him, Chris Daraz. Daraz, whatever.
That just could have been him after a quarter ounce of coke.
No, he had just done work all day. The wife came with the baby. It was really weird, man. But I sensed something, but I didn't know what it was.
But in Bill Clinton's case, I mean, it's like the lights are on, but no one's home.
Right. Like an MK Ultra, it was just he was programmed.
Yeah.
Well, there's all kinds
programmed to be a trafficker.
There's all kinds of ways to manipulate people. I think you could now do it with just like devices like 5G and stuff. Subcarriers, same idea. You can manipulate weak-minded people.
Yeah, low frequency energy. Yeah.
Or a super high frequency, like multi-gigabyte, 30 gigabyte.
And that's another thing when you look at the places where these riots and these protests are taking place in these cities. They are all 5G already. Here in Chicago, we've been 5G for quite a while. And it's weird because, going back to the beginning, we were talking about the hive mind and how, the bees and birds move around in sync with one another. That's kind of what they're doing. And if you research the ELF and the frequencies that come off the 5G, I mean, we could very easily be talking about the whole mind control thing, and it goes right across the board between these rioters being manipulated, these child trafficking, sites being manipulated. I mean, it's all having to do with things that are manifested in the spiritual world and brought into the physical world.
Yeah, there's definitely like an entire universe seething under the surface. And I think these demonic entities are, there's different kinds. I think it's like the ocean. So you can't just say, well, this is an evil spirit. They're as varied as the creatures in the sea. They're all different. I mean, there's different species of them, but there's more than you can count.
Well, we know that, for example, like with the Abra Malam, which was done in 1922 and it was never really actually finished by Aleister Crowley in New York. And he left the portal open, and from that, There's even news article. It was actually in the newspaper. It was in 1924. You can get it on the internet, where you can see what Lam was the demon that he summoned, and Lam looks like a gray alien.
Oh yeah.
So I've been saying for years that aliens are demons. I mean, that's what they are.
Yep.
And the same thing with and they come through the portal into our realm, and we have these, for lack of a better word, UFO experiences or whatever. And then there's also, they literally come into your space. I mean, we talked about this once, Rob, where I was, like, I have been around places where I have felt, again, I'm empathic as well in many ways, and to certain things, especially very sensitive to energy. And I have felt that dark, cold feeling in a warm room, and you're like, it's freezing, but it's like, 74 degrees in the room, and you're fucking freezing. And you can feel this like presence around you, like you turn around and you feel there's somebody there, and they're not. And I have seen, like we talked about this previously, what they call shadow people, which is like you see these like things that flash by your eyes.
Oh, those are very real. Those are.
Yeah, has it ever happened to you, Laurie?
Absolutely, it has. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we talked about that last time, and oh my God, this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with, like he said, it's an interdimensional. That's where they're coming from. That's where.
Yeah, they're not extraterrestrial beings. They're interdimensional beings who can.
Right.
Yeah, who can come across the curtain, you might say, between dimensions. And and here's another thing: is the human eye can only detect a certain, like a very low percentage of the things that are in our surroundings. So when you have these high energy frequency beings that are vibrating at a different frequency than we are, there's another world that is invisible to us present right here. And sometimes it gets, the veil gets very thin. And that's, I think, when you can see these beings moving around. I mean, I've had many experiences with shadow people.
I've seen them hundreds of times across my life, from childhood. And the creepiest thing was like, because Robo knows that I've been a writer my whole life, and I'd be writing something really deep into something, and it was like I'm 15 or 16, whatever it was, and my parents are out, they were away, whatever, and I didn't have a party, and I was alone. Because they would go away a lot and leave me alone. Because my dad was, with the union, he was off all the time, so I was left alone a lot. And we had some unbelievable parties, I must say, when they were away. But I'm digressing. And I would sit there typing, writing, thinking in a deep thing, and I felt as though my mother was home. And I was like, and then I just realized my mom's not home. And I go and I look in the room, and she's not there. And I'm like, wow, of course she's not there. But why do I feel like someone's there? And I remember this when I was a kid, not knowing anything about these things at that time. And I began seeing shadow people around that time. And Robbie knows, because he grew up, and he used to come through my window into my everyone used to come into my bedroom window to hang out with me and to avoid my parents, because of the way you could get in my bedroom window was real easy from the outside. And I had this thing that would knock like that, not like, like on the wall, but the wall is in the other room, and my dad is in the other room watching television, and he's not knocking on the wall. This happened for years while we lived there. And I lived there, I guess, for about a good 20 years with my parents, And so I've been around this spiritual thing my whole life. And I had an experience when I was 15 also that I guess I never knew what it was. And more as I get older, I feel I understand what it is. And it's this message, that we have to try to get out to people. But I think it's past that now. Like we said earlier, I think we have to start taking action. We know what these people are doing. Look what we've just talked about. Look at this evil. How anybody could let this happen is beyond my imagination. It's just I can't comprehend it. And it is a spiritual battle, like we've said from the beginning. It's a spiritual battle of good versus evil. These people want to use us as slaves.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground here. We started out with the masks, and we wound up at the same spot we always do, is that there's evil spirits and some kind of supernatural war going on between good and evil for whatever reason in our adult lives here. So most people aren't cognizant of what's going on. They're only looking at Black Lives Matter, and George Floyd, or they're only looking at Biden and Trump. Where, those are just like the mannequin show. There's a lot more going on. I mean, there's a battle going on in every country, and there's a battle going on in all these different realms in every country. So it's up to us to find the people who are on our side, we have to find out which side we're on, and then find our allies, and pick their brains. They have figured out certain aspects of this thing we're talking about that we might not have thought of before, and vice versa. So that's why it's important to talk to each other. Notice that even with all this technology, we're still running into problems. Like we had trouble logging into Zoom.
Yeah, good
No
point.
matter how advanced the technology gets, there's always something that gets in the way with people like us talking with each other.
Yeah, I
I'm
agree with
actually
you there.
surprised. I'm actually surprised we stayed on the air for as long as we have because of the things that happen with us when we get
No,
together.
we're not on the air. That's how it worked. And the other day, I actually recorded a conversation with Howie with an MP3 recorder because I knew it was going to screw up. So I have this great sounding audio. You don't need the video to have these conversations. Looking at our faces, if we can use older technology that avoids the censorship, it's just as good. When Howie and I grew up in the 70s, for Christ's sake, all we had was vinyl and cassette. We had tape record. We didn't have an internet.
I still have all my cassettes.
You
I
still have all
play
your
them on, but I
cassettes?
still got them.
Yeah, I only have a couple.
What's sad is that I got rid of my albums. I never should have done that. I have like 12 albums. They're good ones, but I got rid of all my albums, Probably worth some money.
I got tired of carrying them around.
Yeah, I know. That was always the hassle, Remember you used to put the album on, you could put like 4 of them on and they could go down, they fall down. One at a time, that's your playlist. We are old.
That's our advantage as old users, is that if the grid goes down, we'll know what to do at least.
Yeah, I could live without a cell phone. I could live without all this technology, honestly. But
yeah, I mean, if everything goes down and the shit hits the fan, these younger people will literally won't know how to drive to the store. They won't be able to find a local,
I don't need electric. I got
at all.
I got an acoustic. If I could just have my acoustic guitar in the woods, some a water filter, I'm good. A couple of rounds.
You got a kazoo.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on. Anyways, we were thinking of calling this Howie's Happy Hour.
It's usually more than that, but yeah, that's it. We called it last week. I actually titled it, or whenever we did one, called it Howie's Happy Hour. But whatever. I had been jotting down some notes, so we did. We covered mass, we covered pedogate, satanic ritual abuse, interdimensional beings and demons, and the spiritual battle of good and evil. So what the hell can we call that? That's a very long title.
Howie's Happy Hour. There's definitely going to be an October surprise. We're definitely going to get hit with some big surprise between now and Election Day. Some crazy thing, probably with the grid going down.
Hey, that's what I'll call it. I'll call it October surprise. Pedogate, mass, pedogate, SRA, and an October surprise. It can't be like Howie's Happy Hour. That's silly. I mean, it's good we made a joke. It was an episode last time. That was funny, but it sort of played.
No, that's the thing.
Although I have been drinking beer throughout this entire episode. It's only 2 though, so.
You keep it silly.
Yeah, if I would have known you were going to call it, if I would have known you would have called it happy hour, I would have broke open a bottle of wine here. Come on, guys.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. Maybe we'll do that next time. We'll actually do one. We'll all drink like that show Drunk History. I like that. Drunk History is the best, even though it's like sort of phony in a way. I mean, they leave a lot out. History Channel leaves a lot out.
So
yeah,
I wonder.
Go ahead, Harry.
I wonder if we could talk about the arrests in Australia, because
yes,
I see that as a crucial thing right now. Alex Jones is going to, I don't know the details, but there's going to be some kind of protest led by Alex Jones in solidarity with the Australians who were going to protest Saturday, that pregnant woman who was arrested simply for posting on Facebook. And thank God they were live streaming during the arrest. And I wonder, what your thoughts are on this. Where do you think it's going? And, how long until that's happening here, if it's not already, because maybe it is.
I think that we had touched on this before, Harry. We talked about it, and I think this is exactly it. Australia is like a testing ground, just like Connecticut and California are testing grounds for Agenda 21 protocols and abidance with all of the, ICLEI stuff. And I think that that's what they're doing. They're beta testing. I think this whole COVID psyop is actually a big beta test to see how far they can push us, to see how much they can, and to use what Rothschild said in Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars was how to analyze the results of shock testing to see how everything affects us, our buying habits, what we want to do, what we're actually doing. So this has actually been done not only as a psychological operation to basically conform us or break our spirit like a horse, or to train us, or to get us into this Pavlovian feeling that every time you walk into a store, you must put a mask on. This response that is conditioned from constant repetition in every media source you could think of, every company you could think of, your boss, your friend, everybody's all about this. That whole psychological operation, which is Harry's specialty, I'm sure he'll chime in on this, is being used to convert our society so that we can accept tyranny. Simple as that. And what they've done in Australia, nobody here is saying anything because it's not done here. But I tell you, if they did what they did in Australia here, there'd be some bullets flying because they can't shoot back. Their guns were their guns were taken away 10 or 20 years ago. So we're in deep shit.
I actually did a show about it exactly a month ago. Putting out their staying apart, keeping us together campaign there in Australia. How they're going around, rounding up people and telling them, you can't go out of your houses. You can go out for an hour. Only one person per household can go out per day. I mean, they're literally locking them in under house arrest, and they have no recourse. They have no guns to fight back. Like you said, they've taken away everything. They have no First Amendment right. They have no Second Amendment rights like we have here. But it's coming here because Australia is a proving ground for the New World Order.
Well, remember, it's Melbourne. It's not the whole of Australia. It's Melbourne, which is pretty isolated, and they don't. It's weird. They don't have pedogate activists down there either, which I found strange. So there's no Save Our Children protests in Australia. And they only have like 100 deaths on the whole continent for the whole thing. All right, so that's the other thing, is that not only are they locking everyone down,
people are crazy.
They literally, I think they only had 100 people die since the whole year.
Unbelievable.
And so, the thing with Australia is, like we say, it looks like it's a sandbox. The vibe they're putting out is more of a Chinese vibe than a Nazi vibe.